Hello, and welcome to another episode of Letters from Camp. Today we are joined by Nick O'Connell, who's going to be the Assistant Program Director this summer, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Nick, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. You're doing an awesome thing with this whole podcast. I love seeing and hearing everyone's stories that they've had over the years.
Oh, thank you. So as you know, we like to get into things kind of getting your camp story. So tell us about, your camper years, even if that was at different camps, kind of your staff years, what areas you've worked in, kind of your story from start to now.
Yeah, so you actually alluded to it a little bit. I did start off as a camper going to a different camp. My unit is part of the Spirit of Adventure Council now, which is formerly the Boston Minuteman Council. And the first camp that we ended up going to was TL Storer in Epsom, New Hampshire. So for my first couple of years as a scout, I went up there. It's a beautiful property, a lot of space, kind of hard to get around if you're 10 and you have to walk a mile and a half in 10 minutes. But you know what? I made it work somehow. And we were there from 2011 to 2013. Then in 2014, our unit leadership came together and they decided, they didn't really like how the program was running. They thought they could get a better experience. So they ended up making the switch to Winoxet. And they've stayed ever since. We love the property. We love the people. We love the program. Everything has been awesome so far, as you can tell. I mean, I work there now. So we started going in 2014. And then when I transitioned it was a rough transition for me to go from a camper to a staff member. I was kind of looking for something to do when I was in the summer of 17. I'd been working at the council Cub Scout day camp for a little while. But I had a couple friends, Paul Trubiano and Owen Doherty, who had been working on Winoxet staff for a bit, and they thought that I might be a good fit. So reached out and they got me a position. I was working in Brownsea for that first year in 2017. But while I was working, the week that my troop was there, they also had me split duties and be the SPL. That was challenging. I was real tired. I was grateful the day that camp director said, "You need to leave camp," and shuttled me out so I could have a little bit of a reprieve. But yeah, it's been a crazy growth. I didn't really catch the Camp Winoxet staff bug until my second year, though. I remember what happened vividly. I was walking down the street. I live in Quincy. So I was walking down the street past the CVS, and I hadn't really known what I was going to do. I didn't apply for camp for the summer of 2018. But, it was later on, my scoutmaster reached out and he's like, "Hey, they need people to work at camp again. Do you want me to put in a word?" I said, "Sure." And it was 3 days before staff week. I was walking in front of the CVS. I got a phone call from an unknown number. So I was like, well, this is weird. Picked it up, said hello, and voice on the other side, "This is Dan Megan, camp director of Camp Winoxet. Nick, I hear you're looking for a job. How would you like to be an assistant adventure team director?" I said, "Sure." And then he said, "Great, beat a staff week in 3 days." And I was like, okay. And that summer, when I got to work with Matt Ford and be my first year as a senior staff, and I really saw like the background of how we're actually supposed to help develop the younger staff members into being who we are, like that's where I caught it. And I've ran with it ever since. I'm so happy that I can come back every year. I think I was the 6th person to submit an application to be on staff this year.
And when you're telling the story about being the SBL and on staff, for those who don't know, 42 Quincy, probably the most organized troop that I've ever seen in my 23 years of working at camp, and a lot is put on the youth leadership too.
Yeah,
in terms of organization.
I think we had somewhere around 50 scouts as a unit that summer, so it was taxing.
Yeah, but good on you getting that all done. Moving now kind of into the administration, what are you excited about with the new position? And are there any kind of ideas or plans you have to build on what's already there?
I think it's going to be a huge change for me, but it's one that I'm welcome to. I've been working in program forever, and I'm actually super excited to be working with Rachel this year too. There is maybe a little bit of a spoiler coming up on our summer scavenger hunt. There may or may not be a question. Between the two of us, we've worked in every single area of camp except for one of them. So maybe you can figure out what that is. But yeah, I have wanted to help out as many areas as possible. And actually, the last couple of years, I've been in this unofficial official role. That's basically, it was made up by me and a couple others staff, Ethan Graham and Eric Ravel, where we wanted to feel more important. It was the COPDID, COPDIT, the co-program directors in training, because we were doing so much extra work on top of our regular area director duties that we wanted to feel a little bit special. As for ideas I have, man, there's so many. I hope to visit every single area. And one of my big things is always just organization, organization, organization. I'm sure that if you went and asked anybody who I've worked with, like all of the sheds that I've had, all of the lessons plans that I've written, everything is so clear cut and easy to follow. And I just want to make sure that basically anybody could pick a paper up, and if you need to teach the electricity merit badge, you can teach the electricity merit badge. You might not have all of the skills to be able to do it, but all of the knowledge is there, and that's something that I want to try to develop this year. That, and also I'm really looking forward to working with each of the areas individually and hoping to put together a really strong and cohesive program where the areas are working together. I don't want it to feel like handicraft is always competing with nature, because there's those two sort of areas, or scoutcraft is always competing with Brownsea, because they are always competing, but we are still a one cohesive camp unit, and that's really what I want to get the feeling of.
Yeah, and assistant program director is a great job for that, because really, a big part of your job is getting to see all the areas,
Mm-hmm.
making the rounds, and what do you need and what can we help with, and all that. So you definitely are kind of, the string that knits everything together in that sense. Um, so, you mentioned you come from 42 Quincy, which is an out
Yep.
of council unit. And out of council units are so vital to helping us sustain the program at the level it's at. We couldn't probably run 7 weeks if we didn't have out of council units. Why do you think it is that out of council units choose Winoxet, and so many end up staying there?
What really did it for us, I think, was the hospitality provided by the administration, and then the personal connections that staff members made with the scouts and the troop, really. Um, the staff at Winoxet really did everything it could to make sure that our unit felt welcome and felt at home, and that we got whatever we needed, no matter if it was an extra cutting board or a knife. And I think at some point they brought like a whole set of dining hall silverware up to us, because we like to cook extra meals in our campsite, because I mean our 15 adults need something to do during the day, so they'll just feed the kids. But I also saw it as I continued. I've had troops when I was the scout craft director. There was a unit that came to me and asked if I could supply them with like 15 Dutch ovens. I was like, well, I can give you 6 because you don't need 15. They only had 12 scouts, but we gave them the Dutch ovens, and then they came back the next year and said, oh, by the way, we built you this woodshed. That was awesome to see. And it's just the fact that the staff is willing to go so above and beyond to provide for the units is what I think keeps them coming. And then the personal connections that I mentioned again. I know that when I talk to some of my friends who have since aged out of the troop and moved on to bigger things, these are guys who are like 25, 26, 27 at this point. They still remember how Keith Kidder taught our unit like 3 sessions of fingerprinting merit badge in one day, because there was just, we all couldn't make it at once. And the lengths that you guys went through to provide us with almost all of the kayaks in camp so we could do our kayaking trip to Seiji Island, which is, we used to do a kayaking trip at TL Store. We would go to the Suncook River, but because we weren't so close and didn't have access, we asked if we could use the kayaks and go to the Seiji, and it was basically just the same experience. We added a little bit of a scavenger hunt to it, but we got to do all of those things that we wanted to do. And you almost never said no. You made anything that we wanted to do possible. And it's like, I mean, I don't like using this analogy because I think it's really played out, but it really is like the Disney of the scout camp. All the magic is there, and they give you everything that you need.
Yeah, and for me, just working in administration, getting to know the adult leaders from all the units, is being in scoutmaster meetings and all of that type of thing is really cool to see the same people coming back every year and build those connections too. And then, they're the boys and young women who they bring every year might change, but
Mm-hmm.
like there's people who are lifers, and they're always going
Yeah.
to keep coming back, and I think your unit has a couple of those.
We do. And, it's also really funny because in the past few years, I've worked with a lot of kids whose parents have been on camp staff. I've got the Maxwells, Kevin Raykiff, Jay Ray, his dad was on staff. So, like, there's, it becomes a little bit of a dynasty, but not where you're there because you have a name. You're there because you love the program and you love the camp.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move into our lightning round. So what is your favorite camp song?
My favorite camp song. Now, my favorite camp song to sing or my favorite camp song to listen to? See, there's two answers here.
Let's do both.
All right. I love the Rattling Bog. I'm a big fan of the Rattling Bog just because I like talking really fast and I like taking up as much time as possible. That is one of my favorite things to perform. I don't get to do it a lot because, again, it takes so much time out of the day. But when I can, it's a real treat. My favorite thing to listen to, I love Ain't Gonna Rain No More. The creativeness, I mean, some of the verses get really old, but when you get into like a rainy day and we need to be in the dining hall for an extra 15 minutes because we don't know if the lightning's going to be hitting a tree or a scout, yeah, something like Ain't Gonna Rain No More, where you just run out of the normal verses and you've got Tom Jufrey running up onto the bench and pulling something from God knows where and throwing a verse out there nobody's ever heard before. It's so fun to watch all of that.
Rattling Bog, good one with St. Patrick's Day coming up. How about your favorite camp skit?
Favorite camp skit. I've seen a couple. One of the favorite ones that I've been in is we did a fire lighting skit my very first year on camp, which was Gordon Ramsay Comes to Camp Rennoxit, where we had the Brownsea staff doing different first year scout tasks. And the guy who was playing Gordon Ramsay, Trevor, it was kind of like actually watching Gordon Ramsay. I might have cried a little bit when he dumped the bowl of pancake batter on my head. That was one of my favorite things to see. And then we do, yeah, I think I'm going to go with that one.
Okay. How about your favorite camp meal?
My favorite camp meal. It is not Hunter's Chicken. Hunter's Chicken is terrible, and I will stand by that forever. I am not a Hunter's Chicken fan, and anybody on staff who believes that Hunter's Chicken is good can come and find me later, and we can have an argument on why it's not actually Hunter's Chicken. My favorite camp meal, hot take, it's the pork loin. I love the pork loin. The Monday night pork loin is always spiced really well. Got that good gravy and the awesome potatoes that goes with it. It's consistent. It's delicious. You know what you're getting every week. And sometimes there are scouts that don't like pork loin, so you might find a little extra piece on your plate.
Yeah, I'm also team anti-Hunter's Chicken. I'm not a mushroom guy.
No.
The sauce just doesn't do it for me.
No.
What is your favorite place in camp?
My favorite place in camp. Man, there's a few of those. I really like going out to chapel early in the mornings. I have actually my phone background right now is probably my favorite place in camp of all time. I took it at about 6:30 on a Thursday morning. I grabbed a kayak. I went out into the middle of the Thorndike, and I just have this picture of the mountain. So the middle of the pond overlooking both, the chapel section and Mount Monadnock, and then you can see the waterfront. It is gorgeous. And honestly, my favorite place might be in the middle of the pond.
That is a good one. It's also a good one. Not that this is always allowed, but when the Waklo fireworks are going off, the middle of the lake is a good place to be.
Right.
All right. And then, when you were kind of first coming to camp, was there anyone who maybe, on staff you looked up to or maybe served as a mentor for you?
Yeah, there's a couple people who I actually looked up to. The first person that I can think of is Jacob Roger, who was the archery director at the time. He's been provost scoutmaster for a few years, and he was also the shotgun director. So I'm fortunate that I got the chance to also work with him. That he's become one of my best friends over the years. And he served as an awesome mentor for me. He gave me all sorts of shotgun information and helped me figure out how to teach the classes. And then we've been really good at just like, if I ever needed to vent because I have a tough class, or sometimes I've got 60 kids in shotgun classes during the week and I need somebody else up there to run a box. So it was awesome to have Jacob Roger there. He really had an awesome camp spirit, and I was glad to work with him. The other person would be, he was nature director for a couple years, Mike Mahoney. Just the energy that he brought to camp is something that I really strived to replicate, because he ate, slept, and breathed everything that it needed to be an awesome camp member in the presence of the scouts. He ran a program one year, which was believe it was called potted plant or something. Basically, he gave you a trowel and a tiny pot and said, "Go into the woods and dig a plant up and take it home." I found my favorite type of tree, which is a striped maple tree, all over camp. Put it in a little pot, took it home. I still have it sitting in a pot in my yard. I named the tree Mike after Mike Mahoney.
Nice, nice. There is a staffer from the mid 90s, Dave Makar, and his vigil name translated to Stripe Maple Tree. And I don't know the exact story that goes with that, but I know that they definitely can be found around camp. So
Yeah.
that's all right, great. Any kind of closing final thoughts? Anything you want to share before we wrap up?
You know, it's just you can see it with all of the content that's been coming out recently from all of the camp social media pages, from these podcasts and interviews that you're doing. There really is an extensive history behind Camp Winoxet, and I am proud that I get to be part of it. It's not a chapter in my life that I will ever forget. I've been at camp for this is going to be my 10th year going on, and it will carry with me forever. The lessons I've learned and the friends I've made, it's one of those special sort of places that you only find once in your lifetime. And if you ever have the opportunity to come and experience Winoxet, I highly recommend that you come and give it a chance because it is gorgeous to walk around. Everybody is fabulous. And the impact that it will leave on your life is unmeasurable.
Yeah, and for those who have been following the social media, definitely shout out to Jim Ganley, who's been putting together most of the history posts with a few assists from people. But shout out to Jim. We'll definitely have
Mhm.
him on someday. But definitely follow along with the social media. We got some events coming up. We have the service day in April, and then the big 100th family day coming up in June. So stay tuned for details on those. And Nick, thank you very much for joining us, and good luck this summer.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it a lot.